Welcome to this episode of the Martial Truth Podcast, my interview with Filipino martial arts master June Gotico. He's from Stockton, longtime practitioner of Filipino martial arts. I was lucky enough to meet him a couple of years ago at an event that was held here in Phoenix. Got to actually pair off and train with one of his students and, an instructor in the system, so it was great. And when I was thinking about who I could reach out to, that would be a good interview with him. Law enforcement background, really good guy. I hope you find the interview as interesting as I did. Again, we're over, I think, 16,200 subscribers now. Channel seems to be growing in leaps and bounds. I appreciate everybody that's supporting the channel. My podcast that I appeared on, Whistlekick Martial Arts Radio, just dropped. So if you go to Whistlekick Martial Arts Radio, you'll be able to find that podcast where they interviewed me. Check it out. Tell me what you think. Please click that like, share, subscribe button. We're always fighting the algorithm. All right. Consider becoming a monthly member. All right, the memberships are growing up to 141 members. So again, grows slowly but surely, and that's the way I like it. I'm not looking for massive numbers here, but we'd like to get more members and spread the message of what we're trying to do here at the Martial Truth YouTube channel. So enjoy my interview with June Gotico. So June Gotico, welcome to the Martial Truth Podcast. June is a senior practitioner of Filipino martial arts, has an excellent lineage and who we train with. And June, why don't you give us an idea of who you trained with and talk about your background a little bit?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Michael.
No problem.
Great
Appreciate
to see you again. Since the last time was about a year ago, maybe 2 years ago.
I think 2 years ago. It was the martial arts mashup, I think, in Phoenix.
Yeah.
Noah Legal had brought it to. There wasn't a lot of people there, but for me, I actually taught 3 sessions that weekend, and then you guys came in, and I had a blast doing the stick fighting with you guys. And I remembered you, and I remembered your guys, and I just had a good time. And I was thinking, who could I interview? And right away, the first person I thought of was yourself. So again, I appreciate you coming on.
Well, I'm glad I made an impression. So, my name is June Gotico, and I'm based out of Stockton, California. Growing up, I grew up in the San Francisco area, Daly City, to about 12 years old. Then we moved to Central Valley in Stockton, which is close to Sacramento, if you're not familiar with California.
Sure.
And I started my martial arts early. My parents used to get me into karate. So I did like Kenpo and Renbukai.
Okay.
Right after high school, a lot of my friends from high school started doing the Filipino martial arts here in Stockton. At that time, it was kind of a big thing. Had multiple groups here based out of Stockton. And if you know anything about the Filipino martial arts, you know that basically Stockton is known as kind of like the, I guess, what's the best word I can use for it? Kind of the home base for Filipino martial arts in America.
The springboard for in here.
For it, yeah.
Okay.
So I was right out of high school, probably around 18 years old, around 1988 or so. And I started, 2 friends of mine, Abrescy and Butch Gargalicana, got me to go with them to a house over on the south side of Stockton on San Joaquin Street. It was owned by Leo Giron. So he was teaching Escrima out of his backyard in his basement. Leo he's Filipino, was a World War II veteran, actually fought in the Philippines using Escrima. So, he was well known and also kind of legendary in the art. So it was kind of at the time, I didn't really know that much about Filipino martial arts. So it was kind of like one of those things where I kind of just walked into it and kind of learned as I started doing it.
Okay.
But I was really amazed. I mean, when you first walk in, you have Leo here as a humble older man, probably in his 70s or 80s at the time.
Okay.
And first thing they do is interview you. He didn't want to teach anybody that he thought was, going to use it in a bad way. So he'd sit you down and talk to you. And it was one of those things where it was, for me, a little bit different because you coming from martial arts background, a lot of schools are very structured.
Right.
You come in and, you gotta bow.
Right.
Everyone is called, by their title, master or something like that. Well, he was a gentleman that, teaches out of his backyard, and in his basement. And first thing he tells me is, hey, my name is Leo and I'd like you to call me Leo.
Okay.
You guys are kind of like, my boys. I look at you as family.
Right.
So, that was a little bit different.
Right.
And, I liked it. We had a lot of people that were around my age group at the time. So it was it was fun as far as you come to class, you learn, and there wasn't a whole lot of, I don't want to say structure, but a whole lot of the other stuff that you kind of have in martial arts, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of that, you come in and you have to.
Well,
Oh, go ahead.
it's interesting. The style of karate I do, Ishinryu karate from Okinawa. I know the guys, the initial Marines that studied in Okinawa, they said the classes were not structured.
Mhm.
And it was the same thing. The founder had them in the backyard, and they just trained. They showed up
Yeah.
and trained, and he would come over and show them something or correct something, and they just continue to work out. And even when I first went to Okinawa in '91, the classes weren't as structured as like we see here in the States.
Mhm.
So yeah, I've experienced a little bit of that too. And in even my dojo, I try to keep it more relaxed. I find a lot of these modern martial arts guys are way too rigid. Like it's almost crazy how rigid they are.
Right.
And I want students laughing during the class, and a lot of my teachers are like that. And I guess that's maybe why I've been drawn to those particular teachers. They don't take themselves so serious. They're not, pounding you over the head. Oh, do this. No, it's a very, it should be a relaxed atmosphere. I think it's more comfortable to learn in that atmosphere.
I
Y-
believe so. I
Yeah,
mean, that's kind of what drew me. It was kind of
yeah,
like you're coming in to hang out with your friends a lot of
yeah.
times. That's the feeling you got. And the training is what was like, not just a camaraderie, but like the training was, I mean, you're in his backyard. And Leo trained you in a way, if you know a little bit about his history, he would tell you stories about World War II where he was coming up and they would fight with, live blades in the dark against Japanese soldiers who had samurai swords.
Right.
And a lot of times the seniors in his platoon would teach him like they would train and they would teach him techniques on the fly, techniques that he may have to use later on when they go on patrol or something. So the training, I mean, it was pretty aggressive. It was pretty hard, but I enjoyed that, and I thought it was, coming from him, was kind of a truthful way of teaching
Right.
at the time. So it was back in the time. I don't know if I know you've been doing martial arts for a long time, but at least in Stockton, there was still a lot of I don't say bad feelings, but there was a lot of like not opposition. I don't want to say the wrong word here, but you had other Escrima clubs, and there was some kind of there's a drama between them a lot of
Friction.
times, friction, or just you know I guess competition
Right.
maybe that's a better
Right.
word to use it.
Right.
Competitors against each other.
Right.
So, but it wasn't at that time. It wasn't unlikely, or it wasn't not known that people would come to your club and challenge you.
Right.
It was that kind of thing
Right.
where, you heard stories about that in karate schools and so
Right.
forth.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was like that in Stockton at that time.
Right.
So, it was not unheard of that would happen. One of the things that Leo told me when I first came in, because he said, "Hey, you're new, and if we ever have a group or someone to come challenge us, you have to make sure you get in the back because you don't really know anything yet, and make
Right.
sure the students get in front."
Right.
You know, I mean that was the kind of things that you tell me, and I'm thinking like, "Whoa, what's going on here?"
Right. Right.
you know?
Well, it's funny you say that, right? Because I got into Chinese martial arts about 25 years ago. So I started studying Chen style Tai Chi Chuan. I'm an indoor student of a senior Tai Chi master. Okay.
Mhm.
He accepts me as an indoor disciple, and he says, "Okay, you're gonna be teaching now in your school." And he said, "So you might get some challenges." And I looked at him, and I thought that kind of was over with because I had that early on when I first opened my karate school. A couple of guys came in, looked to prove something. Okay, but that kind of stopped because obviously everyone sues everybody now.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was a different
But
time.
right.
Yeah.
So now he's telling me though, he says, listen, it's not the case. He says, we still have it where someone will come in and challenge. They won't necessarily say that they're the challenge. Oh, could I just feel your skill? Oh, I'd just like to pair off with you. And then they try to do something. So it's just interesting how certain arts, all the arts seems to have gone through that. And in Tai Chi, it's still a thing. It's still a bit of a thing.
Oh,
So it's
really?
and it's funny because you think, oh, it's Tai Chi. We all think of it as the soft thing in the park, but the real martial Tai Chi, no, it's about fighting and
Oh, wow.
can you handle yourself? So I know in Japan, I went to a park. I was invited to a park to do Tai Chi with these guys, and a guy there challenged me.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, yeah.
Was this
And
recently or?
probably about 10 years ago.
Okay, so relatively
Yeah,
recently.
relatively recently. And
Yeah.
he didn't do too well. Uh and a little bit different. I have a lot of real fighting experience, right? I was a cop for
Right.
22 years. I was a transit cop. I worked alone in the subway system. You
Hmm.
better be able to handle yourself. But I always find it fascinating, like when my teacher first told me that, I was like, really? Like people are they still do that? And he's like, yeah. And so it is a little surprising, especially I always, because I'm thinking, oh, it's Tai Chi. It's the so-called soft stuff.
Yeah.
But if you're doing it as a martial art, as we do, yeah, there's still that element where someone wants to come in and see if you can actually prove yourself. So it's
So
just kind of
was this
funny.
your teacher school you said in Japan?
No, so what this was my teacher was a disciple of Hung Jung Shen, who's was a disciple, the number one disciple of Chen Fa Ke, who's like the most famous Tai Chi master, or one of the most famous Tai Chi masters of the early 20th century. So we're in that lineage, and my teacher, these three Japanese guys also studied with my teacher's teacher, but not to the extent that my teacher did. He was born
Mhm.
and raised in China, moved to Canada, and has become a Canadian citizen. So, um, when I called him when I got back, I said, I went there and the guy, the one guy challenged me. And he says, oh, they tried that with me too when I visited. And I said, they tried that with you? And he was like, yeah. And I said, I don't know what it is. I guess maybe because they feel they trained with your master, like my teacher's master.
Yeah.
Like that automatically means they kind of got it, but they didn't get it. Their Tai Chi wasn't that good, right? It just wasn't, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, I found it funny though that they were looking to challenge people. Well, and then afterwards it was funny. They sent me an email, a long email, trying to explain why I could defeat them so easily. And I just kind of looked at it. I showed it to one of my students. We're all kind of laughing. And I said, well,
Yeah.
the reason I could defeat them was because when my teacher tells me to practice a certain way, I actually listen and do it. You had my teacher there, right? You could have asked him for help. Instead, you try to show everybody how good you guys are when they
Yeah.
weren't that good. And what I
It's
wanted to
kind of
mention too,
interesting.
yeah,
I
what I wanted
mean,
to
just
mention,
I thought it was kind of interesting that you were a visitor and it was you
yeah,
that.
yeah, like when the guy, it was funny because it was a British guy who was there, and he goes, "Oh, this is our push hands guy," because that's how we do it in Tai Chi, right? And I go, "Okay." He goes, "You guys should push." And I said, "Listen, I'm just visiting. Like this, literally, what
Right.
you just said is
Yeah.
literally what I said. You guys invited me to come here. I'm just, here to work out, whatever you guys want to do." And I'm thinking it's going to be, we're going to, push like two kind of just guys, and he came at me like a freight train right off the bat. And I just went, and he went flying, boom, 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 hit the ground. And then he came
Wow.
in again. And, and I said, okay, we can do this all night and you're going to hit the ground every single time. But again, like I get people, I visit my dojo all the time that I have never met. And they'll go, oh, Sensei, different arts. They don't even have to be the same art I do. Oh, we've seen you on YouTube. We just want to come and visit. Everybody's welcome to come here. They come here. I'm not here to beat them up. I'm here to, if they want to learn something, I'll show you. If you just want to talk, I'll talk with you. I'm not
Right.
interested in doing this nonsense. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But,
And then that's
but
why it sounded surprising to me that you were a guest and they were
yeah,
like kind
very,
of openly
very,
challenging, surprised, like the head of the school said,
yeah.
I
And,
didn't
and,
know,
and
he's
I
here to
had
visit.
nine of my guys with me. And a bunch
Uh-huh.
of these guys were cops. So they were tough guys anyway.
Yeah.
And even walking back, we're all looking at each other. We're like, what was that all
What's
about?
going on?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, we wouldn't do that to people. But one of the
Yeah.
things I wanted to mention is you talk about your teacher fighting with blades. And I know I understand this, but maybe other people don't. Is, we're always seeing the sticks being used
Right.
in your art. And everybody thinks, oh, it's a stick fighting art. But in reality, that's a blade.
Well, originally, if you
Right.
look at the history of Filipino martial arts, it's about the weaponry, which is usually bladed.
Right.
Okay, it's going to be swords, bolos in the Philippines,
Right.
different types of swords in the Philippines, knives. I mean, that's what we're known for.
Right.
But of course, throughout time, it's probably not conducive to train with blades all the time because you
Right.
can end up getting hurt, right?
Right. Sure.
So a lot of times and it's the same thing with say kendo and stuff. They kind of brought it down
Yeah.
to like
Yeah,
using
we
like
use
wooden
wooden
swords.
weapons. In
Right,
Kenjutsu, we use wooden bokens, which are dangerous as hell, but they're still a lot safer than a blade.
right.
You know.
So throughout time, it has evolved. So because of using like it's a blunt weapon now.
Right.
A lot of Filipino martial arts are known for using sticks now, as far as they
Okay.
develop arts and it's become a stick art for some different styles.
Right.
But you're correct. Originally, it should be a bladed weapon,
Right.
and I guess through time, because of the use of the stick, they developed different techniques using the stick and so forth. So a lot of the art now, if you see some styles, it's predominantly like a blunt weapon, which is a stick, and
Right.
So, but yeah, you're right. Originally, in my Leo Giron's system is a bladed system because he
Okay.
trained with bows and so forth. So we still, that's a aspect we're trying to keep within our system. But you have a lot of arts now that are in Filipino martial arts that are, their main thing is use a stick.
Just a stick.
A lot of their techniques are based on the stick, which is really cool. I mean, it's kind of made the art grow more.
Right.
Yeah, but we do demonstrations and everything. We're always using a stick because again, you really can't use a blade. I mean, you can use even a blunt, blunt steel blade still hurts a lot if you get hit.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So,
yeah, break a bone easy. Yeah.
Right, easily. Yeah. So it's really, for training purposes, it's probably best to use a stick. So when you do have accidents or so forth, it's probably not as traumatic.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah, but originally that is the strength of the development, in my opinion. Again, you have Filipino martial has blown up within the last 20 or so years, right? Everywhere.
Yeah.
And to me, the strength has always been in the weaponry. I mean, that's our strength.
Right.
If you do Filipino martial arts, you start with weapons, and eventually you probably graduate to the knife, and maybe graduate to empty hands eventually. And you go to a lot of places, and see a lot of seminars and so forth. You see all these guys doing Filipino martial arts, but a lot of them are doing the hand stuff. They're doing a lot of cadena de mano or panatukan, and that's what they're showcasing. I think, in my opinion, for us as an art, I think it would show them the weapons, because that's what we're known for.
Well, the other thing is, and I talk this all because I do a lot of different weapons arts, and I've dabbled in Escrima, so let me preface by saying that. But if you're gonna engage in a life and death combat, you have much better chance of surviving it if you're using a weapon.
Oh yeah.
I mean, and it doesn't matter what that weapon is, but I tell people this all the time. I mean, you take the art out of it, and again, these are martial arts, so there is an art aspect to it. We're preserving a cultural thing, or we're preserving a fighting art, but you just eliminate that and make it pure. I have to survive. If you have a weapon, you have a much better chance of surviving the outcome.
Oh, I mean,
no question.
That's real life, right?
Yeah.
I mean, throughout history, if you look at history, the people who had the better weaponry always won those wars, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Nobody's running there fighting empty hands. So, I mean, they're starting off with a weapon, right?
Right.
Back in the day, may have been a staff or something, or a long spear, right? Eventually down to swords, and then we started doing, of course, like guns and stuff like that, where you don't have to be close to anybody anymore. But you're right.
Yeah.
If you got the bigger weapons or the better weapons, you're going to be the person that's going to be in charge. So.
Yeah. I jokingly say all the time, what was the first weapon, a rock or a stick?
Right.
I mean, it's very simple, right? It's one or the other, right?
It's that force multiplier, right?
Yeah. It really changes everything. I mean, and like, again, as a police officer, I mean, people ask me, well, how often did a criminal have a weapon on him? And the answer was 99.9% of the time, right? I mean, and what kind of weapon did they mostly have on them? A bladed weapon.
Yeah.
A bladed weapon, So, again, they're out there,
Right.
And again, like, you also say too, which I think the stick is, for you guys, in terms of from a real self-defense standpoint, I think the stick is a better option than, say, the blade anyway.
Mm-hmm.
From a legal standpoint.
A legal standpoint, when you start to open blades up into things, and then you as a law enforcement person understand that it's like having a gun almost. You're not taking that back.
Right.
You start swinging that blade around. It's not just like shooting a bullet. It's not coming back.
Right.
So
it's just interesting too how society views things, right? They look at a gun, obviously dangerous weapon. They look at a knife as a dangerous weapon. They look at a stick and they're like, oh yeah, of course you could use that, but it's the way they look at it, right?
Right.
They look at it differently,
A little bit differently, yeah.
Yeah, we had an incident years ago when I was working where a guy was on a subway platform and 3 or 4 guys were harassing these 3 girls. And these girls moved over to this one guy who was going to work, and they asked him, "Hey, could you help us out here?" And he just nicely asked the guys, "Hey, you're scaring the girls a little bit. Could you just, leave them alone?" And they attacked the guy.
Oh,
And
wow.
they all wound up down on the subway tracks off the platform. And when it was three of them, it was the Good Samaritan, and he was in between the two bad guys, and there was a couple of more bad guys up on the platform, and the one bad guy on the tracks yelled up to the other bad guy, "You've got the gun, shoot him." When the Good Samaritan heard that, he whipped out a knife and stabbed the other two guys on the tracks
Oh,
like this. So now they didn't have a gun,
yeah.
but he didn't know that. Now those guys get dragged up. They all flee. They go to an emergency room. The Good Samaritan actually calls the police. The police get there and they go, "Where you stabbed?" He goes, "Oh, I'm not stabbed. I stabbed the guys." "What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
And he tells them the story, but the girls were in the wind, but they found the guys. They found them at the emergency room. So they locked all them up. And then now the question is, well, is this guy going to get in trouble?
Right. Right.
Luckily, at that time in New York, he did not get in trouble. The
Okay.
DA looked at
Good.
it and said, "Hey, this guy's in the right. Guy's going to work."
Yeah.
So I did ask him one question. I asked the guy one question. I said, "Would you help someone again
Hmm.
after going through this?" He said, "I would, but I wouldn't carry a knife again." He's
Hmm.
now I realize that it could have gone either way for me because of the knife. And
Hmm.
he was into martial arts, so he had training, and that's why they wanted to shoot him because they couldn't handle him. The two guys couldn't handle him fighting, you
Yeah.
know. But again, going back to that perception, right? So luckily at that time in New York, the perception was, hey, this guy was in the right. Like he's
Wow.
facing a bunch of guys, and he
Well,
no
yeah.
no charges are pressed against. But we know now it could in modern
Yeah.
times that can easily go the
It could
opposite
easily
way.
go the other way. It could easily be different. Yeah. Which is, you know what? That's just unfortunate. It
Oh, it is.
really is.
It's very unfortunate.
Yeah.
It's very unfortunate. I mean,
Because here's a guy that's really just trying to defend his life,
yeah.
life of others. All
And
right.
protecting these other girls, right?
Right.
Just looking to,
Helping
hey,
someone
not
else.
looking for trouble. Hey, do me a favor. You're scaring the girls a little bit. Could you leave them alone? And of course, there's four of them, so of course that makes them tough, right?
Right.
And then two of them found out they weren't so tough,
Right.
right?
Right.
So, but
Um, even though you're right, it's the legal aspect or dilemma. It's there. It's a good example of how in a situation where you're outnumbered, that
oh,
force multiplier
oh yeah,
makes a big difference.
yeah,
It really does. I mean, that's realistic. That was a great realistic situation that you taled about, where I mean the guy didn't even really want to use a knife, but he was
right,
in a
right,
position where the odds were against him,
right,
and he
right,
was able to turn the odds in his favor because he had a force multiplier with him.
right. And who's to say if he didn't have the knife that he wouldn't be dead?
Uh, that, exactly.
You know what I'm saying? And again, I can tell you, having been down on tracks and dealt with, you got the third rail there.
Uh-huh.
You touched that third rail the wrong way.
Hmm.
So
You're
they could have
gonna
just fallen. And
right.
if he had, you're dead instantly.
Yeah.
It's instant. Yeah.
Wow.
It's a bad way to go. So,
Wow.
so again, you don't know. So in this instance, I mean, the guy saved his own life,
Right.
which was good, because
Oh yeah. I mean,
he was
definitely.
the guy in the right? That's what we like to
Yeah.
see.
And I'm
Right.
glad it turned out right from. But
Yeah.
and you're right. I mean, nowadays things have changed, and like you said, like the perception, a lot of things have changed, and it could have easily went the other way.
Right.
But I just think that story is a great story, and saying that, hey, here's a situation. It is almost like a life and death situation.
Yeah.
You
100%.
got, I mean, you're outnumbered what 4-1. I mean,
Yeah.
you're probably not gonna. You're probably not. I mean, they can really do whatever they want with you,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
So it's kind of neat that he showed that a use of a weapon can kind of like turn the tide for you and
Yeah.
help you out. So that's kind of I like that story.
Yeah. I mean, even me, like when I talk about real self-defense, like when I talk about women, I say, look, if you live in a state where you're able to carry a firearm, if you're a woman, that's a great equalizer against any man. I
Oh,
don't care. I don't care how much martial arts you do as a woman. If you're a smaller woman, you're coming up against an ogre, a massive big guy, you're going to have a hard time with him. I mean,
right.
but you have that firearm, you can even those odds and better those odds
Oh,
very quickly,
I agree with that. I
Yeah.
mean, that's just a realistic view of life.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can see what you want. Like you said, you can learn a lot of things, and but yeah, I mean, if you're outnumbered or even like say in a situation where the person's way bigger than you or had just that much of an advantage, oh yeah, that's going to turn the tide just like
So one of the things I want to mention with you guys, well, I found interesting, and again, I'd only had a cup of coffee with one of my students who's been doing Escrima for a very long time in Oregon, Doug O'Connor.
Mhm.
Um, he studied with Ernesto Presses.
Oh, so he's a modern Arnis.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
So yeah. So anyway, with you guys that day when I was working with your student, who was I think all the guys you brought that day were more senior guys.
They were all instructors, yeah.
Yeah. So so for me it was great, and initially we started, and then he started, and then we just started playing around a little bit, and which for me was kind of fascinating, and he had the gloves on, so he was safe in case I screwed up, you know. Um, but I mean, that's one of the things I noticed. You guys get a little bit more relaxed and start doing sometimes a little bit more what looks almost like a freestyle
Mhm.
or, you know. So,
Yeah.
but when you guys start, is it set patterns and then you build off those patterns?
You know what? It's exactly what you're saying. It almost just like karate. You got to teach
Okay.
it at the very base, right?
Right.
We're talking, beginning students. You're talking them how to stand correctly,
Right.
stances,
Right.
right? You're teaching them exercises like striking exercises, from the different angles, just so they can get coordination in their hands, development of their hands and how to hold a stick, and just kind of build that endurance from swinging a stick for a long period of time.
Right. Right.
Okay, so you're doing that's basic stuff, just like karate, right? Basic
Right.
stuff. Teach them how to punch, teach them how to block, teach them how to move correctly.
I refer to it as reference point karate
Yeah,
when they
that's it
first
exactly.
start.
So
It's
we're right
literally
there. We're
reference
start.
point. Right.
That's where we're
Hand on the
starting.
hip. Right. This. Right.
Right. Making sure the hands are in the proper
Right.
position, make sure the body position is correctly, make sure your stance correct. Then we teach you, different striking patterns just so you get that coordination how to strike and hold the weapon without hitting yourself with it, right? That's where we start. And then we'll start into the defenses, basic blocks from different angles. In our system, we have all 12 different angles that we use.
Okay.
Defenses all the way up to 12 and so forth. And once you get there, then you're learning you're learning to do block multiple strikes at one time. Because
Okay.
initially it's going to be one strike, right, per angle. So
Right.
you can learn the different defenses. Okay. You get those down, then we start going to multiple strikes, 2 or 3 strikes at a time. Okay, defending.
So do you start with a single stick?
We start with a single stick. Our
Okay.
our style starts with a single stick, but we'll teach you 2 sticks just for
Okay.
coordination, so you have
Okay.
both sides of the body.
Right.
We'll teach you what they call sinawali, which is a pattern as far as like which means to weave. So we'll
Right.
teach you like different patterns so you guys can hit sticks, and it's kind of
Right.
cool, but it
Right.
teaches you coordination on both sides of your body.
Right.
So we'll delve into you get your 12 angles down. We'll start teach you multiple strikes. That we'll start introducing techniques with 2 sticks, and then probably a knife. And then in our system, we have different weaponry we use. We use a pocket stick, which is
Okay.
like a palm stick.
Right.
We'll use that, and then we'll start going into patterns that are free flow. And then once you get in those patterns and you learn how to free flow, then from those patterns you break off.
Right.
Then it becomes more like light sparring, or
Right.
where it's just kind of like you're basically you're almost fighting, but you're not in a controlled manner.
Right.
We're not
Right.
going in there
Right.
trying to kill each other.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, I say that all the time. My own, my approach to Okinawan karate is very different. I don't do anything sport related. I don't do sports sparring. Everything's close in, attack, be able to deal with it. Right. But you can't recreate real violence in the dojo
right.
unless you're planning on people getting really hurt. And the last
Well,
time
yeah,
I checked, when people come here, they're not interested in getting hurt.
no,
You
they're
know,
not. And they're not going to come back if they do. So
yeah, and again, like a lot of, I say this too is like, I tell my students, you're training for that one time in your life, maybe when you need it to protect yourself. But other than that, it's for the camaraderie, it's for the exercise, it's for the pure enjoyment, the physical fitness, all those different aspects, you know, that come into it, right?
right.
So yeah, the one thing I will say with you guys, which I like, is your footwork. You guys are moving.
Hmm.
One of the things that makes me crazy with the karate guys is a lot of them move like their feet are in concrete.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Mm.
They do a lot of stepping back and they're very like set. They're not like moving. And when people come and train with me, especially people that do the same style I do, they're a little surprised. Like, wait a second, like your footwork, well, we're fighting, right? You
Hmm.
can't, you got to be able to move. You have to move in a fight. There's no stances in a fight. You've got to be, you look at any top flight boxer. a guy that's got good footwork can
Oh
move
yeah.
around the opponent like, oh my God, it's like amazing to watch the guy,
Right.
right? And I say, well, why, karate should have the same thing, right? And we
Hmm.
see it in the Filipino arts, you guys are always moving, right? And
Yeah.
the footwork is very fast. And even my Tai Chi master, the first time I was training with him over 25 years ago, he said, the problem in modern martial arts is everybody's feet are very slow. And here's the
Mm.
Tai Chi master saying, he says, no, Michael, your feet if you can't move your feet, how are you going to move in the fight? You have to be able to move,
That's a great
Yeah.
point. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I like about when I watch you guys, like your footwork is very relaxed. You're moving. It's not stiff at all. And that's something I like.
It's out of necessity. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't stand still when someone's swinging something at you like a
Yeah.
stick.
No.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of times you got to be quick with your angling off and your movement because, again, punches and kicks out of a certain range, but you got weapons with like a stick or something else. It goes a little bit longer. So
Right. Well,
you got to
also
make sure
you might be able to take a punch. You might be able to take a kick.
Yeah.
You get hit with a stick in the right spot, you got
Yeah.
a
And it's
problem.
coming much faster a
Yeah,
lot of
you
times
get
too.
cut with a blade,
Oh,
you
oh
got
yeah. Well,
you got a
yeah.
problem,
I mean, that's we don't have to say anything about that. That's gonna be a done deal, and it's coming faster too. One thing I could say about dealing with the Filipino martial arts is because of the speed of the weapon coming at
Right.
you. I mean, you have to develop speed quickly.
Right.
So you see us, we move pretty fast. It's not because we're fast in general, but it's because over the years of training, we had to get fast to get away from that weapon.
Right. It's a necessity.
It's a necessity, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So once you deal with a weapon, a lot of times, dealing with like say empty hands, it's a lot easier because
Right.
again, it's not coming as fast.
Right. The other
Um,
thing, too is I'm sure you probably feel the same way. Like when I initially introduced working with the weapon on weapon in the Okinawan Kobudo, one, I make sure that the person has to attack the target, not that it's
mhm,
out here in this make believe area where there's nobody standing. But the first night, the first time the person blocks, like you could see in their eyes, oh, like they feel it a little bit.
yeah,
I'm sure in your class is the same thing. The first time they start banging sticks together, I'm sure initially it's probably a little bit of oh, okay, this is real now. Like we're
oh,
actually hitting these sticks against each other. And I find that it takes a little bit for the student to get comfortable with that kind of contact and then go off from there and get more serious.
no, very true. Initially, when you're playing, uh, as you progress, it might be lighter, but as people start getting better, of course, we're going to strike
Right.
harder, so their defenses will be stronger, and that's when people are like, "Whoa, this is
Right.
getting a little real."
Right.
Because if I missed that, I'm going to get hit, and it's going to hurt.
Right.
So by doing that, though, a lot of times, initially, they're not used to the power and stuff. They may flinch, shut their eyes, do weird
Right.
stuff that your body
Right.
shuts down because they're
Right.
not used to that kind of pressure, right? So over time, then it's no big deal.
Right.
You see guys, well, you'll see us standing, toe to toe, swinging sticks, blocking and countering, with no problem at all. Initially, a lot of the guys are, after the first hit, they're like cringing because,
Right.
they're not used to that kind of contact.
Right.
So over time, you get used to it. A lot of times we make guys fight. In our school, we make sure they do full contact as far as we have padded sticks, we
Okay.
use helmets and so forth, just so they can feel hitting somebody for real,
Right.
getting hit for real,
Right.
and in a safe sense, right? You
Right.
pat it,
Right.
you
Right.
might get dinged a little bit,
Right.
you have bruises and stuff, but no one's really gonna go home or with any real serious injuries
Right.
most of the time.
Right.
So just like sparring in karate, so
Right.
you want them to feel a little bit of
Right.
contact. So it's funny how you first get them in there. They may have been trained for maybe 6 months to a year, and then we'll get them in there and start doing some full contact. And yeah, the first couple of times these guys are getting hit, they're dropping their stick and looking around, and you gotta let them get in there a few more
Yeah.
times, and pretty soon these guys are fighting in tournaments, no problem. So it's just one of those, like you said, it's an evolution. You got to build on those.
Well, as a police officer, I could tell you, I came on the job. I was already a second degree black belt in karate, and I'd had my share of fights. So, but there were some guys that, came on with me that went on patrol and they'd never been in a fight in their life.
Oh, really?
And, of course, the academy training is what it was. Let's
Hmm.
just put it that way, right? But it's 6 months. How much are you really getting, right? And I remember some guys, freezing a little bit,
Yeah.
guys hesitating a little bit, and and some of the senior guys would take them aside and say, "Okay, man, listen, I don't know what job you thought you signed on for, but people are going to be trying to kill you. And it
Right.
was interesting. After I was there a while, I had several years under my belt. The training officers would always ask me to address the rookies when they were in training. And I would sit them down and I'd say, so, you're a police officer, right? Yeah. And I'd say, okay, why'd you become a police officer? I said, okay, those were all great things, honorable. I like to hear, but you need to understand it is just like the movies. The bad guy is going to try to kill you.
Yeah.
That's going to happen. If you think it's not, you're in the wrong job. And I said, you can't take it personal. And that's one of the things I learned um, pretty quickly that the bad guy's job is to harm you and your job is to not let him harm you.
That's exactly
And
what it is.
don't take it personal because again, and I'm sure you feel the same way about in combat when you're fighting. If you start to get angry, you've got a problem because your brain is not functioning the way it should be functioning to deal with the actual
True.
situation you're dealing with.
Right.
Um, so that's one of the things I would address them on. Uh, and when I came on, we carried regular straight sticks.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and my stick, believe it or not, is all these old timers would tell you carry a Cocobolo. So I get a Cocobolo, and the thing's like 10 pounds, right? And I'm like, I don't want to carry this thing, right? So one of the martial arts supply companies I deal with, I saw this. I should have brought it out to show it to you, but it was a rattan nightstick.
I like the ones we train with, kind of like
Yeah,
that. Okay.
black, and it had a rubber handle that slid on this long, and at the end, the whole rubber handle was one piece, and at the end, it was wider, so it could go in the holder.
Yeah.
And that's what I carried. I carried
Wow.
that super light.
Yeah.
And it's not something I used a lot. I didn't use it a lot, but I found when I did use it because I could swing it so fast
Okay.
that
It was better for you.
yeah, it was better for me. I didn't want the mass.
Yeah.
I'd rather have the speed. And also, I didn't want the mass because one time I did have to hit a guy in the head with it once.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And what was good is I hit him in the head. It did this to him,
Hmm.
but it didn't bust him open.
Oh,
You know what I'm saying? Whereas if
yeah.
that had been a Coca Cola nightstick,
It'd have been over. Yeah.
I might have fractured his
I
skull.
fractured, yeah, you would have fractured his head
Yeah.
probably. Yeah.
So
Easy.
so that's the other thing I liked about it. It was a shock to the criminal. The few times I did use it, when I struck him with it, it was like, it was a shock to him. And like I
Wow.
said, the one time when I hit him, it rattled his cage so much that I was able to move in and handcuff him. But well, you're dealing with sometimes with guys in combat, if they're high,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's
people.
I can't think of the top of the head. What is the drug they take where you can't feel anything?
Well, back then,
PCP?
well, you had PCP,
Yeah.
and back then, yeah, we had a lot of crack. A lot of people were on
Okay.
crack, but yeah, PCP. I mean,
Yeah.
that drug. I mean, Jesus. Um, so yeah, I mean, and again, that's something again that unless you've experienced it, you can only tell people. And you tell people a story, and they'll be like, "Yeah, there's that. Come on, he's exaggerating."
Mhm.
But no, you see it. It's literally like watching one of these. It was one Chuck Norris movie where he's fighting this guy who's like indestructible.
Right.
And yeah, some of these guys, that's what I mean. And again, when they come down off the high, they're in bad shape.
Well,
But that's
I'll tell
not
you a
helping
story.
you when they're trying to kill you.
I'll tell you a story. Because
Okay.
I have a law enforcement background. I did
Okay.
28 years of Department of Corrections here in
Oh, okay.
California.
Oh, yeah. So
I
you're
was
in
a
the
parole
same
agent.
same boat. Yeah.
Yeah, I was a parole agent, and I worked on the streets with police officers,
Right.
worked gangs and so forth here in Stockton. And true story. One night I was with the gang unit with Stockton. They came about this guy that was on PCP. So they were trying to get, I mean, his guys were just throwing people around, and they're trying to get a control of him. True story. One of the officers used his nightstick, which is, I want to say it was probably the big, heavy wooden ones,
Right.
and was going to town. This guy broke the nightstick on him. It was hitting him in the legs, trying to get him down. Right. Guy was still going. They finally were able to get him in control, cuff him up. The next day, the story was this guy broke both his legs, femurs, going to town, and this guy was still fighting after that. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
That's a pretty
Yeah.
amazing story.
It's crazy. I've seen criminals. So I worked the subway lines I worked on. There was a lot of elevated lines.
Hmm.
We've seen them jump.
Oh, wow.
from the elevated line and hit the ground running.
Oh, wow.
And we're like, and the joke would be if we did that as cops, like we'd break both our legs and
Right.
the bones would go up in our bodies and probably pierce our hearts and we die because,
Yeah.
but these criminals, right? So it's fascinating. So, but the drugs and stuff they've got in their system, it's just, and
Yeah.
people don't understand. Like, so people will say to me in a karate class, well, Sensei, why do you teach chokes? And I said, well, because I'm telling you now, if you come up against someone that's really high, it could be alcohol, doesn't even have to be PCP.
Mm.
They all need blood to their brain. They know all need air to their lungs. So if you can get
Yeah.
them in a position and choke them out,
Right.
um, it's a good
Oh,
skill to have.
it's a very effective move to have. Yeah.
The only thing I tell people all the time is that's one thing you can't be mad when you're choking somebody out.
No, don't hold it too long.
Yeah, and
We know
then
that through, yeah.
yeah, and then you got a problem. And
Then you
so
got a problem. Yeah.
yeah.
And that's exactly why it's been outlawed on a lot of,
Yeah, that's why and again, this is why a lot of and you were in the game, right? A lot of law enforcement training is not great.
no, no, no,
It's mediocre at best,
no.
and
It comes
it
down to
could be a
training.
lot better.
It comes, and you know this, it comes down to training.
Right, right,
Applying a chokehold, any of those
right,
things, a lot of it comes down to training.
right,
And you're right. The officers that are using that, hopefully they're not using a malicious,
right,
intent.
right.
But a lot of times it's because they weren't trained correctly on how to
Right.
use it.
Yeah, I
And that's
choked a guy out in a cell one time that had just tried to take the eye out of one of my sergeants.
Mhm.
And I ran in there. I was doing paperwork and I ran in the cell area and I got the guy in a position and I said something to the effect of nighty night, right? When I was holding him.
Yeah.
And the sergeant was there and, he's holding his eye and he looks over, he sees, and the guy passes out. And then I spun him around and cuffed him to two rails.
Mhm.
The original sergeant went in there as the guy was spitting. And cuffed. So now, if he wanted to spit, he's spitting against the cell wall. But the
Yeah.
sergeant calls me out of the processing because we're not allowed to choke people, right? So the sergeant
Oh.
calls me out of the processing area, and he goes, "I got to tell you, Mike, I looked over when you were choking that guy," and he goes, "And you looked so calm, like."
Mhm.
You were very calm, and I was like amazed looking at your face because you weren't mad at all. I go, well, why'd be mad? I said, but I'm not going to let the guy take your eye out. I said, so
Right.
I had to stop him. I said, and
Right.
he's high on drugs, and the easiest way was to just make him go to sleep. And now
Yeah.
he's fine, sitting up in the cell. He's not hurt. You're not hurt. Everything's good. He goes, I
Yeah.
wouldn't let, he says, I'd never let anybody else do that. He says, but when I looked over at you, you were so calm. And that's the key. You can't get
Yeah.
angry because if you get angry, you hold it a little too long. And now,
Then you have
now
problems.
there are
Yeah.
problems,
And
right?
you have problems. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we know there's lots of cases of that happening,
Yeah.
and that's why it's frowned upon. So,
Yeah. So what's the length of the bladed weapons? Are there different lengths? Obviously,
it,
knife length. There's obviously the bolo, which is longer, correct?
yeah, I mean, if you look, I mean, there's a wide variety of
Okay.
different sizes. Okay. And in Filipino martial arts, a lot of systems use different sizes as far as the weapons go. We try to use, for stick purposes, we'll use like 24-inch to 28
Okay.
inches on the stick
Okay.
purposes. And we do use longer weapons. So we have techniques for long weapons where we use two-hand techniques,
Okay.
kind of like a sword. We call it dos manos,
Right.
two-hand techniques. So we'll that the knife usually we try to train with something like that kind of emulates what you carry, probably 4 inches or so,
Okay.
4 or 5 inches.
Okay.
But for demonstration purposes, a lot of times you can't find knives like that. So your plastic or your rubber knives are going to be a little bit bigger than that.
Right. They're bigger. Yes. The same ones we use here when we're doing knife.
Right. So
We're
they're a
doing
little bit
knife
longer.
stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
If you're doing techniques which, like for example, a spotty daga, which is like a sword and knife technique,
Dagger. Right.
dagger, you're going to use a longer dagger so you can do like controlling moves with your dagger.
Okay.
So it depends on what type of styles you're using. So again, going back to my training, I trained with Leo Giron, which is his system is the Giron system or Bahala Na, Escrima. So I trained with him from 88 to I became a graduate in his system about 91.
Okay.
And I became an instructor in 93 under him.
Okay.
And then later on, I started training with another instructor from Stockton. His name was Dexter Labonog, and he
Okay.
taught another style of Escrima, but was very prominent in Stockton, which is Serrata,
Okay.
under Grandmaster Angel Caballas.
Okay. Sure.
And he also taught a system called the Cuerdas, which is a bladed system
Okay.
under Gilbertino.
Okay.
So later on, me and the other instructors formed a school around 2006. We called it Stockton Multi-Style, and you've seen that's our name when
Right.
we come to
Right.
place, because we teach those three prominent styles out of Stockton, which is the Giron method, which is like Giron Escrima or Bahala Na Escrima. Then you have the Serrata, and then you have the De Cuerdas.
Okay.
So Dentoy taught SLD, which is in his system it's Serrata, Largamano. So he learned Serrata from Grandmaster Leo, from Angel Caballas. He learned Largamano from our teacher, Leo Giron, the Bahala Na
Okay.
system, because Largamano is a long range system.
Right.
He learned the quarters from Gilbertino.
Right.
So I learned from him. So that's why our styles, Stockton multi-style, we teach those three styles of Escrima. So
Right.
that's a little bit of background of what we do here. So right now, uh, we've been trying to slowly move out and try to spread our style out to, so we've been going out to places like New York and stuff like that, or Arizona. So
Right.
trying to do more seminars and stuff like that to kind of spread it. So to get it out. And then again, we're doing pretty well. We got instructors on the East Coast now, South Carolina,
Okay.
Connecticut. We have an instructor that's developing in Texas right now. We have instructors there. I think you know him, Ted Rubino, there in
Okay.
Arizona.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we also have some we have a friend in Ohio that teaches, and one in Hawaii. So it's slowly spreading out of
Well,
California.
it's interesting, right? So I started in 79
Mhm.
and I've seen all the fads,
Yeah.
like, the ninjutsu craze and this craze.
Right.
And I remember when the Filipino martial arts first kind of became like that kind of in thing where people
Mhm.
were taking a look at this and like, oh, but like I know even me when I first saw it, I was like, oh, this stuff is cool. Like there's a different quality to this. And it for me, I'm happy that it wasn't a flash.
Mhm.
Like a lot of these other things, they're popular and then they kind of disappear a
Get
little
out.
bit.
Mhm.
If anything, it's the opposite with the stick fighting, the Filipino arts. You've seen them grow. You've seen them become more and more popular, popularized in movies a little bit. Obviously, Dan Inosanto, I think, has
Mhm.
been, just because of the fact of he's in so many things. Even the one Ishinru sensei, Arsenio Advincula, he does
Mhm.
Lagomano.
Out of San Diego, I
Yeah,
think he's
yeah,
from.
San Diego.
He was a
Yeah.
Marine Corps.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and his father taught him, I think, or
Mhm.
his uncle taught him Eskrima. So it's interesting. So you'll see some of the Ishinru guys have done that with him. So yeah, it's become popular, which is good. I mean, I like the one art I teach is there's very few people practicing it. It's a very ancient style of Japanese
Mhm.
jiu-jitsu, and I'm always concerned that it's one generation away from kind of disappearing,
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's good to see that these arts are being taught. And, like it's funny because the three senior masters you all mentioned, like those are all guys I've already heard of. Like, so
Okay.
even for me, a guy who's had a cup of coffee in a screamer,
Mhm.
like I still try to read a little bit, I'm friends with Mark Wiley.
Okay.
So I've read a
I
couple of his
I know
books
Mark,
and
yeah.
stuff. Yeah. And my student Doug O'Connor, I was reading one book and then he said, no, let me send you a book. So he sent me another book on a screen. He said, this book's a little bit more serious for you to read. So I've always had an interest in it, and I want to bring it where people have more insight. So what I'll do is when I put this will probably drop next weekend.
Okay.
If it's okay with you, I'll put your contact info
Oh,
in there.
definitely, definitely. Oh, yeah,
And
please do.
yeah, so you send me that and your
Okay.
website info and everything. And before we go, I want to touch base with you on one thing because you're the
Okay.
first um, real knife fighter that I've had on the channel. So there's always the debate about teaching how to deal with someone armed with a blade.
Mhm.
So my philosophy is, well, you want to have the student have some idea of how to face someone armed with a blade, arm them with techniques, but explain to them that there's probably a good chance you're going to get cut anyway.
Yes.
So my question to you is, because I listen, I hear guys that claim to teach their martial arts as self-defense. They never do knife defense. They never do any kinds of gun disarms. They never
Mhm.
do anything against the club or, certain things. And I say to myself, okay, well, if your student's going to get robbed or attacked, there's a pretty good chance there's probably going to be a weapon involved.
Right.
So I want to give the student that fighting chance to deal with that weapon, And I just saw a video yesterday, a home invasion. The homeowner knocks the gun out of the guy's hand. The bad guy draws a second gun. He grabs that gun, wrestles it from the bad guy, and then shoots the bad guy and kills him with his own gun.
Oh, wow.
So, and the guy who put up the video is Colin Noor. He's a big Second Amendment guy.
Okay.
And he was saying that for all you people that think you can't take a gun from a guy, he says you could just snatch it out of his hand if he's not paying attention. He goes, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. And it's the same thing I say here. It doesn't have to be a fancy technique. But is your feeling the same that you should arm the student at least with some idea of what it's going to be like facing a guy with a blade, if that's a possibility?
Oh, okay. Well, we both know that facing a blade or even facing a gun, your chances are pretty slim if you're unarmed, right?
Right.
They have a huge advantage on you, right? But I believe that teaching techniques to disarm somebody with a knife or a gun is needed. I say that because it's better to know something, not know something. Okay. If you put yourself in a situation where, and God forbid you're ever in a situation like that where you're facing someone with a knife and you don't have the avenue to maybe run or, get out of the way or run away from the person, that'd probably the best advice I tell you is that, if you can get away, try to get away. But if you're forced, say you got your back against the wall and you got nothing else, then it's better to know something than not.
Right.
That's the truth.
Right.
That's in anything. Anything. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. And we teach, takeaway. When I went to the police academy and so forth, or academy to corrections, I mean, they taught weapon disarming, how to take a knife from, how to take a gun from somebody and so forth. Like that. Not really knives, but guns. We know how to disarm guns. I mean, that was part of the curriculum for arrest and control. So it's better to know something than not know something. Now, you preface that with, hey, if you face someone that, especially if they're very like capable with a knife, the chances are against you. Okay. It's gonna be hard. But I'm not saying that you don't fight for your life if you have to.
Right.
Okay. I mean, if I'm not saying you should go out and you see someone with a knife and you're like, hey, I'm gonna, I learned some techniques, so let's get it on. Okay. What I'm saying is that, hey, teach your students something so they have some confidence that if they are put in a situation where they need to use it, they know how to use it. Okay. But also preface it with, hey, if you have the opportunity to take cover or maybe even just run away, it's probably your best defense.
Or grab a weapon.
If you grab a weapon, then things change.
Pick something. I mean, like I show a technique where I use a t-shirt or a belt.
T-shirt, belt,
and if the guys
grab something and throw it at them,
same thing. I even tell people, if you have change in your pocket, your keys, distract the guy, lunge in, grab the hand that has the knife, and then go to work on him.
Oh yeah. In that situation, anything's a weapon. Okay. If you can grab something that's bigger, a brick.
A chair, anything. A
brick,
stick.
Something that you can throw at them, or hey, do what you can to get yourself out of that situation. I agree with you totally. I do. I think. I think it's important and it's the responsibility of the teacher to let those people know that, hey, I'm teaching you this technique. I hope you never have to use it. Never in a situation where you have to use it. But I want you to know that you have 2 or 3 things that you can go to. Just in case that you have the opportunity to make that move work. So
we had a guy that was slicing up cardboard advertising posters on the subway one night. We were in plain clothes. We were in the next car and we see him slicing these things. And this knife was razor sharp. And we saw the cuts on the cardboard, right?
Yeah.
So I approach him, and as I approach him, I ID myself. I said, transit police, don't move, right? And he immediately reached into both his pockets. So in the style of jiu-jitsu I do, one of the things is the guy tries to draw his short sword on you and you trap the hand. You don't let him draw the short sword. So I trapped the guy's hands in his pockets. And I pushed him into the wall, got him in a position, handcuffed him. Sure enough, he had 2 knives. He had one in each
pocket.
Yeah. And it was funny because the founder of the style of karate I do, Tatsuo Shimabuku, he worked as a farmer in the Philippines for a while.
Okay.
and he only showed like a couple of simple knife defense techniques, but he taught some knife defense to the Marines. And
Hmm.
one of the ones was a guy would come at you with two knives, and he would just like strike the guy's arms, try to strike the guy's arms to
Okay.
prevent. And when I first saw that technique, I was like, that's kind of silly. Who's going to come at you with two knives? So then this incident happens on the
Yeah.
train, and I immediately am like, holy crap. Okay, yeah. So now
Right. Right.
again, okay, so again, reality versus right.
Well, you never know, right?
You don't know.
You
You
just hope
don't
that you're
know.
never in that situation, but you never know, and
Right.
it's nice to know at least you can pull from your knowledge something.
Right. Something. Right.
Right.
And the other thing I try to teach my students, and I'm sure you've seen this too, is, you know, it's funny, people that are good people, and cops fall into this category too, is, a lot of times they think they're going to get shot or they get stabbed, they're automatically going to die,
Yeah.
right? Like they don't have the, whereas the criminal can get shot 8 times and he's walking around like nothing happened. I saw a guy who was stabbed like 27 times in prison and he walked to the infirmary.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I mean, okay, right? So,
Yeah.
so that's the other thing I try to teach the student that, hey, listen, just even if you get cut, it doesn't mean you're dead. I mean,
No, no,
you're
no, no.
still in the fight. If you get
Yeah.
shot, you stay in the fight. You
Stay in the
stay
fight.
in the
Yeah.
fight until the threat's eliminated, you know?
Exactly.
But
Um,
I just see this a lot where a lot of these guys teaching self-defense, oh, I don't teach my students how to defend against the knife. It's too hard and it's just not worth the risk. Oh, okay,
uh,
but
well, then you're not preparing your student for a real life, a
right,
possible real life
real life
situation.
situation, right?
And to go back to your point earlier, if I can,
Yeah, sure.
it was, you're right. One of the things we tell people when you're doing knife fighting or blade fighting is, almost expect to be cut.
Yeah,
Okay. But you're right. Doesn't mean you stop. You just keep fighting. You
right,
may get cut, but it doesn't mean that the fight's over.
right.
So, especially in a knife, and we were talking about disarms earlier. There's a high percentage. There's a good chance that if you're fighting with someone wrestling with a knife, if you were able to get it out of them somewhere along the line, you're probably gonna get cut
Oh
somewhere
yeah.
along. Okay. But the goal is to get the knife away from the guy, and if you're able to do that, then you just have to stitch yourself up later on, but you're
Yeah,
gonna
well,
live.
even I've had students ask me, well, would you grab the blade? Well, if I have to.
I mean,
I mean, come on.
again,
If it's life
what do
and
you?
death, I'm
It's
going to
hard
do
for me to
whatever I have
say.
to
It's
do.
hard for me to
Right.
tell you no. It's because you don't know. You might have to do something like that.
Right. I mean,
Okay.
I've even gone as far as to say to a student, let's say you do get stabbed. Let's say the guy stabs you in the midsection and you grab the hand and the knife is in you.
Mhm.
Okay, well, it's there. Hold it
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Now take his eyes out, strike him in the throat 10 times, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, it's in there. Leave it in there, right?
Yeah.
And they'll look at me like, are you kidding me? Like, and I'm like, listen, you don't understand. And and then I tell them a story where I walked up on a scene one time, and as I walked up to the guy's intestine was hanging out
Right.
about a foot from his
Mhm.
body. And I looked down and I looked at him and I went, like, I pointed at it like this. I went, like, your intestine's hanging out. And he was very intoxicated. He goes, oh, it's okay. It's okay. I said, no, it's not okay. Your intestine's hanging out. And the guy's talking to me completely normal. And I tell people this story and they think I'm like making it up.
Mhm.
Like, and I'm like, no, he was completely fine.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, his intestines hanging out, but he's completely fine. They're
Yeah.
going to take him to the hospital. They're going to push his
You're gonna
intestine
stick
back
it back
in
in there.
and
Yeah.
sew him up,
Soap
and
them
they're
up.
going to
Yeah.
call it a day, right?
Call it a day. Yeah. That's
And
exactly what's gonna
again,
happen.
for me, I use that as kind of a learning experience where, okay, well, you can get stabbed
Oh yeah.
and you can, yeah, it's not necessarily the end all be all. You're definitely
Right.
going to die or anything. You can survive it and move on.
Yeah. Well,
So
there's lots of stories of that. Not
yeah,
just like you said, not just knife wounds, but also gunshot wounds.
yeah,
People
gunshot wounds too. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, how
yeah.
many officers have you heard of that have been shot, but was able to save their own lives by staying in a fight and
Oh yeah,
returning fire?
oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Plenty of them,
Plenty,
plenty of
plenty.
guys.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, and yeah, that's one of the things. And I think part of it is the most modern people, their attitude is, well, it's never going to happen to me. So they never think about those things. But
Mhm.
you go back 100 years ago in the Philippines, you go back 100 years ago in the United States, we were much more rough and tumble.
Oh, definitely,
Because
definitely.
again, you may like there's a video up on a particular YouTube channel. I can't remember the name of it, the Edwardian or something, where it's New York City high school in like 1925,
Okay.
and one of the teachers is teaching the students stick fighting.
Oh, wow. Really? That's a great
Now,
story.
again, it's not the Filipino stick fighting, it's the what you'd call back then the English kind of stick
Okay.
fighting or
Yeah.
whatever, the
Yeah.
Bartitsu, a lot of them refer to it
Well,
as,
okay.
a European
I'm
style.
kind of familiar with what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but there's video of that up on this particular YouTube channel, and I remember seeing it and going, "Look at this." And now, oh, we wouldn't want to do that. But I bet you had less trouble in the schools. I bet the kids learn that, hey, this is, we have to respect each other, right? And
Yeah.
we're learning self-defense, and yeah. So it used to be taught in the New York City public school system.
Yeah. Well, we both know times have changed. I
Oh
mean, when
yeah,
we were younger,
yeah,
if if you had a problem with somebody and you stepped outside, you stepped outside with them, and you
yeah,
guys, fixed it outside or took care of it
yeah,
outside, you came
yeah.
back in and you were friends again.
Right. Yeah, that was it.
It's
Over and
it's
done with.
it's just a different time. Yeah.
It is. It is a different time. I mean, like, I raised all my children, my wife trains in martial arts. She's a second degree black belt in Nishinru. My wife's a doctor. So
Mhm.
once she really started working and we started having kids, she couldn't train anymore.
Mhm.
I'm a maniac with martial arts. So
Yeah.
my dojo is 7 days a week in New York.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
and even here, I'm doing 10 Zoom classes a week. I'm teaching here, and I've got classes 4 days, regular classes here 4 days a week. But but she was adamant with our children. They all have to train.
Yeah.
And they all train till they went off to college. Once they go off to college and they start their own lives, they do whatever they want to do.
Right.
But they all train from the age of 4 up until 17, 18 before they went off to college.
Nice.
And
Nice.
my oldest son is a Phoenix police officer, and
Okay.
he's had to use it plenty. And about 2 months into being on patrol, he called me and he said, "Dad, everything you taught me works." He says, "I can't believe it. It's just everything works." I said, "Well, Nick, I had to
That's
figure it
great to
out.
hear.
I had to
That's great.
figure it out, right?"
Yeah.
Because, again, so your instructor came from a combat background.
Yes.
My first karate teacher, a tough guy, but came from more of a street fighting background.
Mhm.
That's different than the challenges we face as law enforcement guys.
Mhm.
You're facing a hardened criminal. He has his own techniques,
Yeah.
and he's very capable at
Oh,
violence
yeah.
because he likes it and
Right.
he's had a lot of experience with it.
No, that like you said earlier, that's their job, right?
Right. So I found when I first started doing certain techniques, they weren't working right.
Mhm.
And then I realized, well, it can't be the technique because the technique exists in Filipino martial arts, Greek arts, Roman arts,
Mhm.
Chinese, Japanese. It's got to be the way I'm doing the technique. So then I went back and re-examined it and figured it out. But so that's the other thing too, that real world experience, and that too from having it in corrections. It's a game changer.
Yeah.
When you're a
Well,
martial arts instructor and you have real fighting experience, it's a game changer.
oh, yeah. You gotta remember, though, it's different. Law enforcement, correction, so
Right.
forth. In our field, we are dealing with people that are professional criminals a lot of times.
Right.
Okay? It's not like they don't train either.
Oh no.
You're
Oh yeah.
saying that, the you a lot of times we get this idea in martial arts that, "Oh, our techniques are always gonna work. Our techniques, we do this and it's gonna work." It doesn't work that way because
No.
we know that there's people that know how to counter stuff like that.
Right.
There's footage of people in prison that practice techniques so they can, fight the guards or
Yes.
get away from baton
Yeah,
or
spinning off.
whatever.
Well,
Yeah.
so I'll just give you, I can give you a quick story. My son was only on about 2 months. Um, he rolls up on one of his guys trying to arrest a guy. My son gets out to help, and two guys approach from the rear. And the one guy, they're yelling. My son turns and points and says, "Hey, stay right there." Now the guy's yelling. He looks again. They're still coming forward. Now my son sees the guy's got, those spiral knives?
Yeah.
He's got a big one of those in his hand. So my son draws his taser and says, "Stop right there, or you're getting tased," right? The
Mhm.
guy takes another step. My son tases him. The guy hits the ground and rolls and breaks the wires.
Oh, wow.
And he gets back up and he squares off with my son. But the
Yeah.
knife went flying. Luckily, the shock made him drop the
Oh, yeah.
knife. And my son hit him with one punch and knocked him out cold with one
Mhm.
punch. And but my son, I said to him, I says, "Oh," because I never in my day we didn't use tasers.
Right.
That I'm
That was
pre-taser.
before your time. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm
after your time, I
pre-taser,
mean, yeah.
right? So I said to my son, so I said, so you said he rolled. He goes, yeah, Dad, they teach him in prison to roll so they break the wires and it breaks the
Right.
connection.
Because they
Now,
come out and they contact you and they stick in you. And yeah,
right.
to get off. Yeah.
So I said, oh, I said, okay, right. So he said, yeah, but when I hit him, he says that put his lights right out. And he broke his eye socket, his cheekbone. He
Right.
really, and the guy literally said when he came to, he said to my son, he had just gotten out of prison a week before
Oh, really?
and went right back in. And he said to my son, I've been in lots of scrapes, lots of scrapes. I never got hit like that. And I said, well, yeah, if you train right, right. My
Yeah.
son's
Well, your son
big
has a
and
lot of
strong.
training, like you said,
Yeah,
since 4 years old,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Well,
So,
that's the
so,
thing. Let me say something about, training. Me and you, we've been talking a lot about training and how a lot of systems now, they don't want to teach you knife defenses or they don't want to
right,
teach you this and that. As martial artists, and we're teaching, say our students, don't you think it's kind of responsible to teach them that because of your background and what you know and my background as far as
yeah,
being in corrections and law enforcement and so forth,
yeah,
that these people do train. So you're not running across the most, not an ordinary person. You're not. So shouldn't you techniques be even, that's even more
yeah,
reason to learn more and to get
yeah.
better because you will be you're not just facing the ordinary Joe out there that's going to
No,
throw some haymaker that you see coming a mile away, right?
s-
You're going to have someone that's probably, like you said, may have just got out of prison, has spent the last, I don't know, who knows, 4 or 5 years getting himself in shape,
right, right,
training in there,
right,
hoping that he runs into a police officer so he can take him out.
right,
So and that's why my thing too is when I teach people is like you need to get better because
right.
I hear other martial artists say all the time, oh, only you might run in your whole lifetime you might run across someone that's trained maybe once or twice. I mean they're saying that's a reality because of percentages. I don't always
Right.
believe that.
Right.
I believe that you should be prepared for whoever you come across. So
100%.
yeah.
And so I interviewed a guy by the name of Hunter Chip Armstrong.
Mhm.
So he was someone who studied with Don Draeger, who wrote all those books on Japanese martial arts. Very famous guy. He started writing books. He lived in Japan after World War II. So he's passed away now. But they founded a society called the Hoplology Society, the study of human combatives. And Hunter's traveled all over the world, Indonesia, everywhere, looking at the various arts. And what they came to realize is there's a lot of common threads through all these arts because they're all the ones that are specifically designed for combat. But when I went up there, he put it very good. And I started, now I use it all the time. He said there's only three people developing fighting techniques, three
Mm,
types of people: the military, law enforcement, and criminals.
mm. It's very true when you think
And
about it. It's
and when
very
he
true.
put it like that, when he said that, I actually, he's in Sedona, so I actually went up there to interview him. And when he said that, I was like, wow, that's a great way of putting it. Like,
Yeah.
so I use it now all the time when I teach a seminar, or I'm teaching classes, whatever it is. And yeah, and again, the first podcast I did, the title was, "Who are you training to fight?" Are you
Right.
training to fight another karate guy? Because I can tell you now, I never had a guy throw a karate style punch at me in the hundreds of fights I was in, right?
Yeah.
But but you better know how the guy in the street, the criminal's going to throw that punch because it's
Right.
got to have power. It's going to have intent on it, and can you handle it? And that was the whole premise of the first podcast. How are you training? Who are you training to fight? Are you
That's a
training to
great one.
fight?
Yeah.
Yeah, because again, like, I think as martial arts guys, the chances of us coming up against another real serious martial arts guys are probably slim because we're not out there looking for trouble.
Right.
But, the criminal's looking for trouble. He has his own techniques. Do you know his techniques? Do you know how he
Right.
attacks? Do you know what he
Right.
does? Right? Okay. Yeah, like,
Yeah.
okay, well, no. Or are you only training against karate kicks and punches, which, like one night in class, I was doing some defenses against a kick. And someone asked me, well, Sensei, how many times did someone throw a kick against you? And I said, I remember one time. And then
Mhm.
there was three other cops in the room, and I asked them, and one guy said one time, and the other guy said nobody's ever thrown a kick against me. And
Mhm.
I said, yeah. So again, like, yeah, because most people are going to use their hands, right? They feel more comfortable using their hands, right? That's not to say you never train against a
Right.
kick,
Yeah.
right? It's like the same thing. Oh, what are the chances you're going to come up a guy's going to pull a gun on you? Okay, right. Hopefully it never happens. But if it
Right.
does happen, and then, the other thing, and I'm sure you're aware of this too, times have changed. These criminals will cut you. they'll shoot you just because they want to.
Yeah.
It's not like before where, you give them the money and they let you go. Sometimes they don't
No.
let you go. They
No.
hurt you anyway.
Yeah.
You know,
No, you're right.
so,
True, true.
it's and again, and I'm sure you in your class too. I'm sure like if you got the guy that's a computer programmer, right? Or an
Hmm.
accountant, and you show a certain technique and his eyes may go like this, and you may say, well, what's the matter? Well, wouldn't that kill the guy? And I get that sometimes, and I'm
Yeah.
like, well, you may have to take a life to preserve your own
Yeah.
life or the life of a family member. You
Well,
may have to take a life. I mean,
yeah.
that's just the reality of it.
That's the reality of it. Yeah.
Yeah, you know.
To we all want to be peaceful, right? But to
Yeah,
maintain
yeah,
peace, you got to have people that can do violence.
yeah,
Is
yeah,
that a true statement? Yeah.
yeah,
So,
yeah. I mean, look, I would get asked after I'm retired this month, 15 years. And, I'd maybe be in the dojo and one of my other guys was teaching a class. So I was just there and I'd have my gun on my hip and a parent would say, I thought you were retired. And I said, yeah, I'm retired. And they go, well, why are
mhm.
you carrying your gun? And I say, well, because when I look across the street and I see those three guys come up to you in the parking lot with your kid, would you rather me come over there with my gun and stop them? And then the parent kind of looks and goes, yeah,
Yeah.
I'd rather you do that. And I'm
There
like,
you go.
okay, well, I'm retired, but I'm still in my mind, I'm still in law enforcement. In other
Right.
words, if I see something, I'm going to take action. That's
Yeah.
just the way I am. I mean,
Right.
I had 5 off-duty arrests as an NYPD cop,
Hmm.
and nobody
Yeah.
has that.
Yeah. You're never off
Nobody.
duty.
Yeah, because you do. Yeah, I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, and
Yeah. We're
even
never
now
off
that I'm
duty.
retired, I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
gonna, you know, I mean,
Right.
I see a woman being attacked in a parking lot. Oh, I'm just going to walk to my
Walk
car.
away.
Yeah, and I can tell you now, if I'm with my wife, I know what my wife's going to say. She's going to say, "Go get
Go.
that guy." Yeah, like go, because again, I mean,
Right.
that's what I just think it comes with the territory,
Yeah.
So
And isn't that wouldn't you want someone to do that for you?
yeah,
I'm just saying if you,
or for one of your family members,
right,
would you want
exactly.
somebody to help somebody? Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
I don't know anybody who would say no in that
yeah.
situation. I really wouldn't. So,
So listen,
right.
June, I appreciate this.
Oh no, thank you.
This
Thanks
is
for the
really good.
opportunity.
Yeah.
It was great to see you and talk to you again, man. It really
Yeah,
was.
I really appreciate it. And
Yeah.
like I said, this will drop next week.
Okay.
So I appreciate you coming on, and maybe we'll do it again in the future.
Hey, let me know, man. It's great
Something
sitting there
comes
and
up,
just
we want to, even on your end, if something comes up, um, you want to talk about something, reach out to me.
oh, thank you.
Always like I just had the guy Walt Young on. His is dropping this Sunday.
Uh-huh.
He released a pretty important historical video that no one knew existed of a famous karate sensei in Okinawa about 8 weeks ago. So I had him on to talk about that. But he's also having a big seminar. So he
Okay.
came on to talk about that a little bit too. So,
Okay.
that's another thing. If you got something coming up, a big thing or whatever, I can do a blast out to
Okay.
all the subscribers on the
Oh,
channel.
thank you. Thank
So
you.
you just send me the info.
I'll
So,
probably take you
all
up
right.
on that. Thank you so
But
much.
yeah, so I really appreciate you coming on. Thanks.
Oh, you're welcome, and thank you for having me, man. Hopefully we see each
Okay.
other again
Take care.
soon.
All
Okay,
right.
take care. Bye-bye.
Hope you enjoyed my interview. I really enjoyed talking to June. Very interesting guy. I like talking to people from other martial arts that I don't have as much of a background in. I've basically had a cup of coffee in the Escrima world, but I really do like their martial arts. I really appreciate what they do. Just to mention, let's not forget the Ufukuchikuden Kobujitsu seminar that Walt Young will be hosting in Virginia, October, I think it's 12th and 13th. But if you look up Walt Young on Facebook, you'll be able to find it. Last week's podcast has a link to it, okay? People are really starting to share it. People seem to be getting excited about it. So I'm planning on going, so I'm hoping a bunch of you will go. I'll get to meet you guys, and we'll get to train in an art that not too many people know about, all right? There'll be info in the description on how to reach out to June Gotico about the Filipino Martial Arts, okay? So you can, contact him if you're interested in that. And we'll have some more interviews coming up. Again, like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next podcast. Take care.